Okay, so today I'm finally in the flesh, joined by Paul Bardunias. You guys know Paul if you're a viewer of the channel. I'll introduce Paul as he's going to be far too modest about himself. So Paul is an absolutely phenomenal historian and author of the book Hoplites at War, which I recommend to all of you guys interested in ancient Greek warfare. Phenomenal book. Paul is one of the sort of leading historians on actually sort of fighting in ancient Greek styles of warfare. Many of the sort of intricacies and details that people take for granted about the orthismos and how to sort of hold the spear and all that actually comes from Paul. So he knows his stuff, basically. And today we're going to do a part two, a little bit of an addition to a previous video that I did on fighting with overhand spears.
Why don't we start in overhand and address some of the sort of the most popular misunderstandings about overhand, right?
Yep.
So one thing you'll see online when people are talking about overhand spear use is that they will hold the spear very tight, like an ice pick, really tight. And if I do that, as I strike, my strike descends. It has to descend because it's tied tightly to my hand and my hand descends, right? This is a mistake. And the problem with this is you have a very strong blow, almost like an ice pick, right? Very strong blow if you're close enough and if you want a descending blow. But you don't need to use a descending blow. And all you need to do to change it is when you strike, just let it come out of the hand a bit. Now, you see I'm doing this where I'm holding it with just 2 fingers, and that's because if I want to hold it static, I have to do that. But watch now when I use it dynamically. Right? So now when I'm using it dynamically, it's really just my pinky that's coming off and a little bit of this finger. I'm really holding it like this as I hit. So it's really not as unstable as some people think when you're doing this. The other thing, and it's really easy to show, is I'll just hold it out and you can just parry my spear and you'll see what happens. So when I get parried, right? Now let me come out and at full extension parry, right? He's never going to knock it out of my hand. There's no way this is going to get knocked out of my hand, right? And when he knocks me offline, it's really easy to get it back online. This is something that a lot of people who advocate underhand used to talk about, and that is when you're parried, how do you get the spear back online? And in underhand, yes, it's actually quite easy, because when you're offline in underhand, you use the body and you bring it back. But there's a trick, and I know Adam talked about this in the last video. The trick is if you hold it a little bit behind the balance point, when you get knocked aside, all you have to do is bring your hand back. And I'm not using my wrists at all. It's literally just the weight distribution of the spear that's doing that. It's like when you throw a lawn dart or something, the back end always follows the front. So this heavy back end follows the front as I move it back. And that one little thing allows you great versatility in fighting, because no matter how you're parried, you will always come back online when you bring that spear back up.
And I think just to touch on that point as well, some of the comments in my previous video, which I will link down below as well, is that basically they think that you lose a lot of support and strength in the blow when you do that. The difference is holding a spear, very similar to holding a sword, about 90% of the actual grip strength comes from your index and thumb. And that means that basically, even if I were to do this, still most of my strength from that spear is the same as if I were to hold it like that. When you actually stab like that as well, you're not having to release all of your fingers. And as you can see, a straightened elbow at that length is the same as a straightened elbow at that length. It doesn't matter if it's overhand or underhand.
Yeah, that's kind of the misnomer when people look at this, is you'll see somebody hold it like this to show you what it looks like holding it out. But that's not what it looks like when you're actually striking. That's just the only way to hold it static. And I guess that's worth mentioning. The only thing that underhand can do better than overhand is if I want to hold this spear out static, I can rest it under my arm. So if I want to do this for some reason, maybe against a horse, I don't know, whatever I want to do this for, I can't do this in overhand, but I can do it in underhand.
Yeah. And I think that's something that also gets a little bit misunderstood. And it's one of my biggest sort of issues with the underhand argument, is that we're not saying that underhand is an invalid technique. We're saying that it's not ideal in this style of warfare.
Yeah.
The issue that I have with many underhand advocates is that they pose overhand as though it's completely invalid technique. It doesn't work at all. And you see certain, I won't name them, but prime advocates for underhand spear usage who basically make up problems just because they don't know how to use overhand spears. And fair enough. But when you're telling me that this is a problem, because that's all the reach you have, that's just because you don't know how to fight in that technique. And I think it comes down to that sense that if you don't practice the art, you can't really comment on the art. If you don't know how to fight in that way, you can't start critiquing someone who does because you don't fully understand how that method of stance works.
And on this same topic, if I'm holding it tight, I don't have a lot of targets. My targets are if I'm up close over the shield, which is what they'll say this is for. But even that's pretty bad. I mean, it's very, look at this. That's my target. It's not going to happen, right? And they'll say you can't hit the feet at all because you have no range. But when you're using it properly, when I'm properly striking him, right, the face is no problem at all. Matter of fact, the blow is actually sometimes going upward towards the head. So if you were to look at like a mark on the helmet and it had a blow coming upwards, you couldn't tell whether it was underhand or overhand because both of them can come from below and come upwards. The other thing is the feet, right? So if I am striking at his face, I can also strike at his feet. Now see, I can't reach his feet, but that's because this is the reach of my spear. If I'm tricky though, I can just do this and let it slide, right? So my reach is whatever I let this thing slide at. And I've seen comments on his videos talking about losing the spear while you let it slide. And I don't think you're going to do it. We've never had it happen. And the reason is because all you're doing is letting it slide through the hand. You're not like letting it go and catching it again.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost impossible. If you can hold it like this, you can hold it like this. And the nice thing too is the sorter on the end makes it impossible for you to just sort of let it go too far because you're always going to catch it at the sorter.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that is sort of one of the biggest things is the speed that this gives as well.
Yeah.
You know, people underestimate that we're not, as you said, you're not actually sort of throwing it. It is, and mine's difficult because this is a javelin, archaic javelin, so not quite the same as a classical dory. But it is a really quick, and I think you've raised this before, and I think I said that in my last video, the actual speed generated by an overhand spear stab is probably quicker than almost any other weapon at all.
That's probably the quickest strike you could do is this jab to the face, right? And so much so that you do a lot of feinting. Like I'm not really going to hit his face, and I know that. He doesn't know that. But if he picks his shield up, then I'll go for his leg.
Yeah.
Right? So we do that all the time. We feint either to the leg and then go face, or we feint to the face and then go to the leg. And the reason is because the shield covers you from the face to the knee. So if you make it move it slightly, you have to uncover one or the other, right? Yeah.
And that's something I think we just need to underline is when we're saying we've tested this, I'm not saying that I'm shadow boxing, as someone pointed out. I mean, we've got, you know, close to over 100 guys to do phalanx style formations and practical tests. And overwhelmingly, this is the stance that works the best.
Yeah.
So we're not just sort of making this up as we found that this works the best by holding the broom. We are taking people with, you know, as accurate kit as we can, testing the styles of structures of phalanx that we can. And this just shows to overwhelmingly be the most productive. And not to mention, for me, I think this is one of the strongest arguments, is just not even across the whole of the Greek world, but across the whole of the Mediterranean, across Persian cultures, hoplites are depicted with that stance. So if they didn't fight like that stance, I find it very hard to believe that Italy, Greece, Persia, all of these like thousands of artists are depicting this hoplite stance heroically when instead of just believing that that was the stance that they took, when practical testing also backs up that that works for this style of warfare.
Yeah, and one of the things that you'll hear talked about is that when we see a hoplite on a vase and he's standing there with his spear up, he's doing this because he's going to throw it. And yes, often that's the case, but often on the vase you can tell when they're going to throw it because they'll have an ankyle, a strap like that, on the spear. And when they're going to throw on the vase, their two fingers are sticking up because that's how you hold the ankyle. So you can actually see on vases two guys, one up like this, one behind him up like this, who's going to obviously throw because he's got the ankyle. The other thing to remember, and this has to go with what you talked about earlier, about the grip strength in the strike. If you're striking hard with a dory, it doesn't matter if you're holding it tight or not, because that's not what's going to give it its power. You're holding the dory when it impacts is not what's giving its power. It's the acceleration you've given it before it impacts. And to show you why this works, it's sort of a truism that generally throws are harder than strikes. They strike harder, right? So if you are essentially throwing the spear in the overhand motion, you're going to have a harder strike than if you're just stabbing in the underhand motion. And multiple tests have borne this out now. There's, I think, 4 published data sets on striking with spears, overhand, underhand. All but one showed overhand to be markedly more powerful. The other thing is, like I said, in overhand, you have a full range of targets. I can hit him anywhere from the top of his head to his toes, right? I like to say nose to toes. The thing I can do that I can't do with underhand is I can do this and come in around his shield, right? Can't do that in underhand. Underhand has its uses. Like I said, you could hold something out static. You can also, in single combat, underhand is more useful in some ways because you can come at other angles, you can come around from below, and you can come under the shield. But where things fall apart with underhand is, come form with me in a phalanx. If I am using this underhand like this, right, even if we're not overlapped, what happens when I'm using an underhand like this and the guy next to me jostles me, right? And now I'm here and I can do nothing while the guy stabs me in the face, right? When you're in a shield wall, you need to, I'm gonna allow us not even overlapping because some people say they don't overlap. So let's not even go there because that really ruins underhand. But even not overlapping, I need this spear to parry blows that are coming at my face. And I cannot do that if my spear is down here.
It's
right?
basically trapped if it's down.
Yeah, the reliability of getting it up between these shields like this, you cannot rely on this in combat. Now, if we were standing farther apart, sure. Or if we were standing with our shields really edge on like this, sure. Both of those in tests tend to get you killed. Because we tested guys standing at put your shield up in front, at a spacing of about this, which some have advocated for, and we had these guys fight other people who were standing shield to shield slightly overlapped, and it was I don't want to use words that'll get me in trouble on YouTube, but they lost, put it that way. They lost fast, and it was difficult to even get them to redo the tests because they lost so bad. And the reason is because you're essentially facing 2 spearmen, so every spearman's facing 2 other spearmen. And if we were Roman swordsmen or something, swinging swords around, that could be a benefit to have more room. But when you're using a spear, you need almost no room, right? I'm not hampered in any way using my spear right here to hit the guys around me, even the guys next to the guy in front of me.
Even if you want to get offline as well.
Because I'm not hitting him in the head, he's not hitting me in the head, and we have a full range of motion around our heads like this, all right? What else?
Behind.
Yeah.
Ooh. So one of the main features as to why overhand is so vitally important is, let's say that we're in a phalanx facing that way. Yeah. We got multiple ranks deep.
Right, so this is a problem.
I'm now in a lot of trouble, and the guy next to me is in a lot of trouble of potentially getting stabbed by Paul.
Yeah.
As opposed to if his spear is up.
So one way to get around this is we can hold it up like this, and now I can pretty much never hit him in the face because I always let it come down at an angle. So when I go forward, that's when I'm striking, but you see the back comes down as I go forward, right? So
basically
it's never
to your shoulder.
Yeah, it's never gonna hit him in the head. If I was stupid enough to pull it straight back, I could hit him in the face, but it's almost impossible to do that because it wants to do this as it comes back. The things you'll see reenactors do sometimes that confuse the issue is sometimes they'll come in underhand. And then they'll form in a phalanx, so come next to me. And what are they gonna do now? Well, what they'll do is either hold it up like this, under the arm, which is honestly really terrible. This has really limited...
especially in armor, it's a really awkward motion, and you get basically no force. And I got called out with this in my other video, basically saying that I was downplaying underhand. I use underhand when I'm in loose style formation. Sure. I switch between it. This is, in a formation, it is such an awkward stance to actually do, as opposed to this.
And I'll show you why I'll do it myself and show you why it's awkward. So let me have a little room here. So it's awkward because, let's say there are overlapping shields. I have to hold it high under my arm. And my motion, I torque my body forward, right? But if I'm gonna torque my body forward, if I'm standing too much this way, which is how they usually stand, that's my strike. This strike is nowhere near as strong as this full body strike like this. It's just not as strong. And the muscles I engage are more powerful in overhand than underhand. This sort of twist from the hip that you get in underhand, I'm doing the same thing in overhand. This is why people get confused sometimes. They think, well, underhand, I'm doing this twist from the hip and all this torsion's going into my strike. Yeah, it is, but it's doing the same thing in overhand. I'm not just like poking at somebody in overhand, right? I'm doing the same torsion in overhand that I'm doing in underhand. The other thing you'll see, and this reenactors love, this is the one I commonly see. There'll be an underhand, and then how am I going to fight when I get into a phalanx? Come back here, come into a phalanx. So what they do is they just pick it up. So now instead of being an overhand, they're in this weird, I call it high underhand. And this is actually a really awkward way to fight. Sometimes it's actually quite useful in single combat, but in a group where you're stuck with your arm up like this I find very tiring. This I can do all day, right? So I'm doing this if I'm not striking and I'm holding it in overhand, right? I'm not doing this in overhand all day, which is one of the other things. People think you hold it up in the air like this. You don't, you hold it really low, resting on your shield.
Basically relax your wrist at ease and your arm's not getting tired at all.
Yeah. This is a fun little trick of physics, right? Take any stick that you have and try to hold it up like this, and you'll see that this is difficult and this is easy, right? It has to do with the leverage that it's exerting on your wrist. So if you are at rest and not striking, holding it like this, it's easy to hold. And then you just throw the tip up when you strike.
So go back to the throwing as well, is lots of people again mention that it's used for throwing. But when we see that being done with classical dories that are counterweighted, massive spears, those are not throwing spears.
Yeah.
Right? So when, like this, is very much designed to be a throwable spear as well as a stabbing spear. Yeah. Invariably even seeing two being carried to battle. That classical dory is not a throwing spear. The weight is completely off, the balance is completely off. That is not a spear designed to be thrown. So when you see this stance with the classical dory, that guy's not throwing that.
Yeah. If I were going to throw this spear, I would throw it backwards, because the weight on this spear is about here, right? And that's where you want it in a javelin that's going to be thrown this way, right? You don't want, you need to have the longer end in the back past the balance point, which is what keeps it going straight. If I do throw this, if I were to throw this at the camera, what would happen is it would start off straight and then the back would start to sink and it would try to flip in flight. All right, so usually when you throw, I have thrown these, when you throw them, they just sort of land like this. Right, so that's not too good.
Yeah, it's just not made for that, it's not ideal for that. Those are a stabbing spear.
So there we go, a little bit of a response, a part 2 to the initial video, this time with the real expert himself, Paul. A special thanks to Paul, of course, for taking the time to film this video with me. Really, really greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out his book, Hoplites at War. I'll link it in the description below. Really a phenomenal book detailing many aspects of hoplite warfare. I really couldn't recommend it more. Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope if you were some of the people that still disagreed with me after the first one, that this has helped clear up some things. And of course, if you still disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment and me and Paul will be scouring the comment section as well, and we can hopefully respond to you guys. So thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, then please consider checking out our channel's Patreon, and YouTube memberships are also a really, really helpful way. Special thanks to our members for supporting the channel day in and day out, or month in and month out. Really, really greatly appreciated. If not, of course, that is no problem at all. Liking and subscribing is a massive help, and so is sharing these videos around as well to help our niche sort of styles of videos reach more people who might be interested. So thanks very much for watching this video. Thanks again to Paul, and hopefully catch you in the next one. And Paul will be back very soon for another video that you guys will hopefully enjoy.